Today marks the 100th anniversary of the start of the Battle of the Somme, 1st of July 1916. It was the largest battle of the First World War on the Western Front, and in total more than 1 million men were wounded or killed, making it one of the bloodiest battles ever in human history. All across the UK today, actors have been dressed up as soldiers from World War I, silently watching, standing by, and even handing out cards with names of actual soldiers who died there. It's very touching, and several people have shared pictures online, a time to remember the sacrifices that men and women all over the world made. So we know that the Great War was a brutal time, and a lot of people still believe it was a horrific bloodbath fought only in trenches on the Western Front. And whilst it's true that it was horrific and it was certainly fought in large parts of the Western Front, it actually spanned as far as China, and servicemen from Asia, North America, the Caribbean and Africa who all took part in the war. Obviously, in the footage we've seen so far of Battlefield 1, it looks like the game will span across the entire globe. And I thought I'd take the time today to tell you guys some interesting facts that you may not have known about the First World War. With that said, let's get into it and see what we can find. Did you know that an explosion in Belgium was heard 140 miles away by the British Prime Minister in Downing Street? That's a massive explosion. A group of miners secretly dug tunnels up to 100 feet underneath the ground beneath the enemy trenches, and at the Messines Ridge in Belgium, 900,000 pounds of explosives were detonated in 19 underground tunnels, and much of the German front line was destroyed as a result. And considering the size of that explosion, it really isn't too surprising that it was heard over 150 miles away. Letters may not seem like a big part of the war, but get this, 12 million letters were delivered to the front line every single week in World War I. 12 million. By the end of the war, 2 billion letters and over 114 million parcels had been delivered. I did some quick maths here, don't hold me to this, I'm not a mailman, but that's around 74,000 delivery trucks worth of mail. It's pretty hard to imagine just how much the postal system was being worked when the war was taking place. That cannot have been easy to keep a mail system flowing. Now the next one surprised me at first, but when I thought about it more, it kind of did make perfect sense. World War I actually sparked the invention of plastic surgery. Imagine how many soldiers were injured by shrapnel and all sorts of other things during the war. Shrapnel can easily rip a human face apart. A surgeon called Harold Gillies took on the task of helping victims of the war, and he actually pioneered early techniques of facial reconstruction, and he's widely considered to be the father of plastic surgery. Moving on from plastic surgery to Wetherspoons. Okay, this isn't about Wetherspoons, it's about Wilfred Owen. I just happen to have a Wetherspoons pub down the road from me that's named after him. These days, Wilfred Owen is known as a famous war poet. His poems were both realistic and shocking, based on the horrors of the trench and gas warfare experienced during the First World War. He actually sadly died during the war, a mere week before the end, and most of his works were published and made available after his death. The next one is a truly remarkable and at the same time disturbing fact. The youngest British soldier to participate in the First World War was just 12 years old. Imagine that, 12 years old. At that age, your only care in the world should be with your friends, playing video games, chasing girls, whatever it may be. You're meant to be living your childhood. But Sidney Lewis, the 12-year-old, lied about his age and joined the army during the First World War. In fairness to the enlistees, he was apparently tall and heavily built, so his age wasn't ever questioned. He was in fact just one of thousands of eager boys who lied about their ages to enlist and ended up fighting alongside adults on the front line. Lewis actually fought during the Battle of Delville Wood, which saw some of the worst casualties on the Somme, but he made it back home after his mother sent in his birth certificate to the War Office demanding his immediate return, and when he got back he was awarded the Victory Medal, and then he re-enlisted in 1918. Moving on now to blood banks. As you can imagine, with the scale of World War I, severe injuries were frequent, and the British Army began the routine of blood transfusions to treat wounded soldiers. Blood would be transferred directly from one person to another. In 1917 though, a US Army doctor, Captain Oswald Robertson, established the first blood bank on the Western Front. He used sodium citrate to prevent the blood from coagulating and becoming unstable. Blood banks nowadays are commonplace of course, but the first World War really established the greater need for them. Next we have colourful ships. I know that sounds weird, but let me paint a picture for you. Pun definitely intended. Imagine you've got a merchant ship that's carrying supplies, either military or food, to the front line. How do you protect them against enemy torpedoes? Well, you camouflage them, of course. Norman Wilkinson, an artist and Royal Navy volunteer, came up with the idea of covering ships in bold and dazzling shapes and colours. The idea was not to conceal the ships, of course, that wouldn't really work very well, but it was designed to confuse the enemy. It was crucial to protect the merchant ships carrying the food and military supplies to the front from enemy torpedo attacks. And finally for today, we're going to talk briefly about generals. Lots of people think that the generals of the war sat far away from battle in the comfort of a camp while thousands of their soldiers died unnecessary deaths. On the contrary, in fact, many of the army's generals wanted to be closer to the fighting, but they'd been banned from going over the top by their respective armies because they kept getting killed. Over the top, of course, referring to climbing out of the safety of your trench, going into no man's land and attempting to attack the enemy and claim their position. As such, the massive wealth of the experience required to be a general was too much to risk losing. And that's all for today, folks. I hope you found this video interesting and learnt something new. If you enjoyed the video, do give me a thumbs up, that would be great. If you didn't, a thumbs down. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.